Yep, it's all plywood. Hey guys, thanks for checking out my channel. This is my entry for the Rockler Modern Maker Podcast Plywood Challenge. And I want to design a mid-century modern chair, so I set out finding some designs that I could translate into a plywood version. I used my 3D model to be able to make 2D templates, and then imported these 2D designs into easel so I could cut the pieces out on my x-carve. So even though these were cut out on a CNC, they did have some rough edges. So after cleaning them up, I started breaking down my plywood and cutting all my pieces to rough dimension. The plywood I used for this project was Baltic birch, which comes in a 5x5 sheet, and I actually end up only using half a sheet. No big deal. There was a lot of repetition in this project, so right off the bat I started roughing out some of my larger pieces before gluing everything up. And I actually glued this up as a batch just to kind of save on clamps and make sure I wasn't using, too many clamps. Now, of course, you could cut all of these pieces out, including the templates, just on a bandsaw. Sean Boyd actually put a video out the other day on how he makes templates on his bandsaw, so I'll put that link in a card or below. So I think for most of my projects, the main power tool that I use is my table saw, but in this case, it was my router table. So the bits I used were an 1/8 inch roundover bit, a 3/8 roundover bit, a 3/4 roundover bit, a 1/2 inch flush trim bit, and this monstrosity, which I believe is a 3/4 flush trim bit. That's a scary looking bit. Be safe. So this chair is held together by hopes and prayers and about 5 different kinds of joinery, starting with my Festool domino. I use that to do stacked tenons on the double 3/4 inch laminated pieces that make up the legs and the large side stretcher. How could I not bring pocket holes to the party? Here I am putting in the holes, which will attach the seat portion to the sides. Bit of a disclaimer, I think I dry fit the chair about 10 times throughout the process. I just really want to make sure when I was shaping that I got all my geometry right, and I was making sure that all of the pieces lined up where they had to. I did do as much of the shaping as I could on the router. However, I did have to break out the rasp, which was a great skill builder, and I did enjoy doing it. But for the sake of time, I put my angle grinder with an 80 grit flap disc to work, which worked great for a bulk of the material. Leaving it loosely fit together made it a lot easier to pull it apart and do some of the fine shaping, as well as inserting the slots in the seat portion, which I later come back and use a weave for to build the base of the chair. The one thing I didn't account for was the joinery on the back of the chair. So what I ended up doing is using dowels. So I centered basically a mark on my back stretcher, and I used that mark to center the dowel that I inserted into the back stretcher. I also realized at this point that with the way it would attach the base of the back, it was going to interfere with where the webbing was going for the seat bottom. So I just cut out some notches, then back to the router to finish shaping. If this is your first time to my channel, I just really want to say thanks. Super appreciate the support, and if you like what you see, maybe hit that thumbs up button. And if you really like what you see, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. So I cut the fronts of the armrests vertically at about 15 degrees on my table saw, so they'd match the geometry of the main side supports. So for those of you that are counting, the fourth form of joinery that I used was screws followed by plugs, which of course I made the plugs out of plywood. The back supports weren't going anywhere, but during the glue up process, I just popped in a couple pin nails just to kind of keep everything aligned and make sure I didn't bump it out of place. So if you don't know what the Rockler Plywood Challenge was, you should go check out the Modern Maker podcast. I'll link below the episode where they talked about the challenge. I'll also link the Instagram hashtags so you can check out all the other amazing plywood projects that have been built throughout this challenge. For me, this has been an amazing community builder. On Instagram, I've been able to connect with so many new IG builders, and it's just been a lot of fun just interacting and just kind of having a bit of a common cause. So thanks Modern Maker Podcast for putting this on, and thanks Rockler for supporting great content. I kept it pretty simple with my finish. I just used a satin polyurethane on the chair and did about 3 or 4 coats of this just to make sure I had as much coverage as possible. The ends of the plywood were super thirsty, so they sucked up a lot of the polyurethane as I was going. And after 3 or 4 Saturdays of messing around in the garage, the chair was finally done. So if you made it this far, thanks again for tuning in, and yeah, we'll see you guys on the next build.